Ladies and gentlemen, in May of 2011, Munro was here with one of his other sons to talk about the Amarok Society. At that point, I bought this book from him, South Asian Adventures of the Active Sport. And as I often do, I buy books and they sit on the shelf, and they don't get read until I get through my backlog, which I've not succeeded in doing my whole life. But when I heard that Jem was returning, I thought it's a good opportunity to dig into this book. And I'm about halfway through it, and so far I've got to say that it's very profound. What I'm learning in this book is that Jem and his family are people who share two particular beliefs of mine. And I'm excited that they're going to be here to talk more about them today. The first belief is that don't let anybody tell you something can't be done. And if they do, just use that as fuel to power your desire to get it done. And the second thing is that the education of young women is the key to saving the world from poverty, from violence, and from all the other ills that Rotary seeks to cure on a day-to-day basis. So, welcome Jem and Alistair.
Maybe I can dispense with the mic. Can you all hear me all right? Yeah. Okay, good. I'm very pleased to be back visiting again the Rotary Club of Spruce Grove. I've been to, we've visited many clubs across the country. I remember last time I was here, as we were going through the buffet, I guess maybe my hands seemed to falter or something as I was reaching for one of the serving students. But the person behind me, I think it was Rita, said, "You must be getting awfully sick of Rotary meals." And I told her, well, actually, yours is pretty good. I did confess that on occasion I've been unable to suppress a little sigh as I confront yet another Rotary breakfast sausage. What I told her is still true, and that is one can never tire of meeting and speaking with people committed to the principle of service above self. So we have and never will tire of meeting Rotarians. We are very well aware that as we do, we are encountering the best people the country has to offer. And that's saying a lot, because Canada is a country of good people. Now, as Brad mentioned, my wife and I, undertook a problem that was thought to be wholly unsolvable. And that was the problem of, well, I'll preface it slightly. If I were more memorable, I wouldn't need to retrace my steps from last time, but I'll just preface this. We were asked to Bangladesh, which is a country in the very most dire circumstances, as any you can find anywhere in the world. By almost any measure, it distinguishes itself negatively. We were asked to Bangladesh originally, Janice and I, for the purpose of bringing improvements to what is probably the worst school system in the world. Randy, you would be appalled by what you saw of the general school system in Bangladesh. What we came to observe, though, is a circumstance far worse than a deficient school system, and that was millions of children in the terrible and enormous city slums who were too poor to go to school at all. And we undertook to do something about it. And as Brad alluded to, we were told that what we were undertaking, we were told by numerous international agencies that what we were undertaking was an exercise not only in futility, but certainly in fatality as well. And that was to go into these terrible slums and teach mothers within the slums to become neighborhood teachers. And by that means, provide education to great numbers of children at very low cost and very effectively and very efficiently. We decided this after exploring the problem and realizing that the customary method of building schools, bringing in teachers, filling the schools with children, simply is not answering the problem either in Bangladesh or in the world. It's the approach we all want to take, but it's also that we are saddled with that approach. We are failing to answer the problem. And the world is not improving the situation for the children who are too poor to go to school by that means. Now, finally acknowledged what we've been saying for a long, long time, and that is the really desperate situation in the world is not in the villages, where the focus has always been, but in the city slums. That is where the quality of life is worst. And certainly the quality of life gets no worse than for the poorest Muslim women in the slums of Bangladesh. However, I have some good news that I've brought you. Now, last year also in Bangladesh, I think prompted by this acknowledgement by the United Nations, one of the very major international charities and development agencies was organizing a symposium of all of the charitable efforts going on in Bangladesh, all of the development efforts going on in Bangladesh, and to their credit, they said, but we also need to pay attention to the slums. We've got all of these big international agencies that are working in the villages. We need to pay attention to the slums too, what's going on there. And they said, for that, we have to look at Amarok Society. So they invited us to attend. We were very pleased and glad that this was one of the agencies that had said that what we were undertaking was completely impossible. One of the things that they had always told us was that even if we could reach these supposedly unreachable women, we would find that they were unteachable as well as unreachable, and that they could never learn to the extent of ever teaching anybody else. So when they invited us to come and speak about our work in the slums, we thought, why don't we rub their noses into it a little bit? We won't send one of our officers. We're going to send one of our mothers to speak to these international people. And so we did that. And she went, and she was terrified. This was a woman who a year ago wouldn't have even known the word symposium, wouldn't have known that such a thing ever existed. She was terrified, but they were awfully impressed. She was terrified, as all of our mothers, they spend half their lives terrified, but all of their lives very courageous. And she addressed this international group who never would have had anything to do with such a woman ever before, and really, by all reports, carried the day. Now, I'm going to do a poorer job than she did today to tell you some of the benefits of our work. And they are manifest in so many ways I could really be talking to you for hours about the benefits that this approach to teaching children brings. I'm going to do that by way of a few photographs. I'm going to talk about people.
My name is Sumaya. I go to Amarok Society school. I have a daughter. My daughter is 3 years old. When my daughter was 2 years old, she started to do talking. In my family there is a lot of people, so I am the only working people here. I have to do all the work. I have to do cooking, washing and everything. That's why I feel disturbed when my daughter do asking a lot of questions when she was 2 years old. I go to Amarok Society school, and here I do child development program class, and I have learned that we should give time to children. When they ask question, we should give answer properly. But before I didn't understand that. Now I am very much concerned about that. Now I give time to my daughter.
A school in their home of at least 5 children. Many teach more because they find it so fulfilling. This little girl goes to one of those mother schools. So the mother goes from our school to her own home where she teaches her school, and this girl, a neighbor of that mother, attends. I think I told you last time I was here that we see the remarkable phenomenon that anyone would have told you was completely impossible of uneducated husbands, Muslim husbands, sitting in and learning from their wives, and how anyone who's familiar at all with this world would never credit that such a thing was ever possible at all. Well, we've got one better here. This little girl, her name is Mila, and she goes from her neighbor's mother's school to her own home, and this is her family. 2, 4, 5 siblings. I think there's one other missing. I think she had, so it's a mother, father, 7 children, one missing from the picture, and she teaches them all what she's just learned. So she's operating her own school in her own little home. And the fact that not only is her mother learning from her, but her father attends and learns from his daughter is even more incredible to anyone who's aware of this part of the world and the attitudes that have been extant in these very, very backward slums. That's a remarkable story. And that, of course, is the fact that she is the benefactor of her family, that her brothers are learning from her, is going to change their attitudes forever regarding girls and women's development. And we think she's a remarkable girl. And we think we're going to give her a career with our organization. A woman named Nita. She's a mother, and she attends one of our schools. She is, she's about 18 there. She was married when she was about 11. You see what she's doing here. She's reading a newspaper. Now, before she was married, up to the age when she was 11, she had the same sort of freedoms, not the same opportunities of boys, but the same sort of freedoms up to the age of 11. So she was but she roamed about and so on, and would even venture out a little bit out of the slum. And one of the things that she would see outside the slum were people buying newspapers at newspaper stalls, men buying newspapers. And she was so envious of these people as she would see them buying their newspaper, because she believed that they were buying the whole world. And her world was so tiny, so she was always really envious of them. Now, of course, she married. She had no education, no educational opportunity whatsoever. She enrolled in our school. She learned to read. And she got an idea. And that was, all of her neighbors pooled their tax. Taxes were about 2 cents. And every day, they buy a newspaper amongst themselves. And she reads it to them. Now, I was talking to someone about this not too long ago, and he said, you know, it's those little things that make it all worthwhile. And I said, this is not a little thing. This is a great big thing. When you're giving people the world, that's not a little thing. This will also be a preventative against their availability to the extremists who are constantly attempting to overrun and take control of the population. They need a window on the world. So she's now known as the newspaper is. I don't know if you can see what's on their headdresses there, but it's International Women's Day 2012, Amarok Society. And here's a banner that they're carrying that has our slogan, Teach a Mother, Change the World, and then the Declaration of Women's Rights here, Amarok Society, Bangladesh. Now, there's 2 things about this. They are parading. When they first found out, this was about 4 years ago, our mothers found out that there was such a thing as the International Women's Day. And they thought this was the most fantastic, wonderful thing they'd ever heard of. That there was a day in which the world paid attention to women's rights and possibilities. So they took it upon themselves, the first year, to organize a parade in which they put these headbands on, and what they did was they paraded, all of our mothers paraded through each of the slums in which we operate. And what's remarkable is that they did this without any serious repercussions at all. Because they did it unified, because they did it as one. And they all, hundreds of women, marching through each of the slums with their slogans calling for women's opportunities and recognition of women's rights. Now, it's now an annual thing. They're very clever. They don't just parade, they organize their own symposia now. And they always invite leading imams and leading municipal politicians time they started reassessing women's role in the world. And they do it because of what they've just seen demonstrated. You can't legislate these changes of mind, you have to demonstrate and educate. Now, last year's parade, or last spring's parade. And you see she's got a very intent look on her face, and it's just happenstance and good fortune that we got a picture of this woman. You saw the others are looking pretty happy. She's not looking particularly happy, and I'll explain to you why. It's just good luck that we happened to capture this picture. She had just performed, one of the things that they've done last spring was perform a play that they had prepared in our schools about the very damaging effects of this very peculiar and extremely bad dowry system in Bangladesh. I'll give it to you very briefly. The older your daughter, the more you have to pay dowry to her husband's family. It's extremely peculiar. There's no other system like it in the world. It had a sensible origin that's been utterly distorted by extreme Islam. The result of that is the poorest people must marry their daughters off at the earliest age, 11, to keep the cost of the dowry down. Now this woman, her name is Khadija, and she has just performed a major role in that play. And as we look at her, she's in the parade, and she's thinking. And this is what she's thinking. She's forming a resolve. She has a daughter who's 12 years old. And there's a family that has been outlining to her what dowry they will accept to take her daughter into their household to marry their son. And what she's thinking right now is, I'm not going to pay it. This woman started a dowry strike. She said, I won't pay anything, and you can't have my daughter until she's 16. The response of the boy's family was, all right. Now, all of our mothers are participating in dowry strikes. They don't all have marriageable daughters, but they're all committed. They are not going to pay dowry anymore. They are not going to allow their daughters to be married at an early age. The little girl who teaches her family, her mother says that her daughter is never going to be permitted to relive her life. She will not allow her daughter to be married at 11. She will not allow her daughter to have a baby every time her husband thinks so. These are the ramifications, these are the manifestations of educating the world and of educating these women. I was speaking with an Egyptian immigrant, and he said, in light of what we do, you can't move into a place like Egypt. The West can't go into Egypt and give women their rights. But you can give them an education, and then they will take their rights. And we live that every day. And that is absolutely the case. Now, there is these are successes that I'm telling you about, but they are always under threat. You probably heard yesterday that a young Bangladeshi was arrested in New York attempting to blow up the Treasury building. Those people who would radicalize the population of Bangladesh are virulent and determined, and they know that if they succeed in the great pools of despondency, hopelessness, and ignorance, they know that they can't possibly succeed in recruitment wherever we operate. And they really do hate what we do. Rotary, we say, peace you will ever find. Right now, 150 million desperately poor people living in an area roughly the size of 1/6 the area of Alberta. So, actually, Bangladesh population, 175 million people in 1/6 the area of Alberta. And they are being told that their path to meaningful life lies through eating you. They are susceptible to that message if they have no education. If they have any education at all, we've seen what people can do with education. Education is the best service, right? And of course that's my opinion, but education is the service upon which any other service stands a chance of succeeding. It's elementary and essential. There is a terrible scourge in the world today, and it's ignorance. As polio distorts the body, ignorance distorts the mind, and it severs it from the human spirit. But we can overthrow this monster by the power of Rotary, the methods we've developed, and the courage and strength and devotion of mothers. An educated and peaceful world is actually a practical possibility. And with that, I will conclude my presentation.
Okay. तो साथे apa? You. Tadi apa?
টাকা দিছি আদি জি
হ্যাঁ বলেন
ও
O and God. Okay, there is one mistake only. মানে একটা ভুল হয়েছে সেটা হলো এটা ইউ না ও না এটা ইউ এটা কি ইউ
ও ইউ কই আমি তো ইউ লেখে না ওই যে ইউ লেখছে
টাকা নাই এটা লিখে দেয়
উপরে লেখে না জায়গা না
ইউ এন্ড গান ইউ এন্ড গান জানো তো বন্ধু পিস্তল যাই বলেন কি এত ভালো আছেন